What happens when a dirty joke about my boss, caught at the worst possible moment, ends up in my husband's inbox? How can a single slip at an office party explode into divorce papers on my doorstep? Can a woman who thinks she's just being bold survive when the receipts are delivered in broad daylight? The wine had been flowing freely at our office holiday party, and I was feeling bold, maybe too bold. But watching my coworkers laugh at my stories, seeing the way they hung on my every word, it felt intoxicating in a way my marriage hadn't in years. "You should have seen Colin today," I said, raising my voice just enough to make sure everyone could hear. The circle of admin assistants and junior staff leaned in closer. He called me into his office for a private meeting, and I swear, the way he was looking at me. Sarah from accounting giggled. "Lirien, you're terrible." "I'm just saying," I continued, taking another sip of my third glass of Chardonnay. "If my husband satisfied me half as well as my boss does during our little overtime sessions, I'd be a much happier woman." The group erupted in laughter. Someone, I think it was Jake from marketing, had his phone out, probably recording for his Instagram story. I didn't care. For once, I felt like the center of attention, like I was interesting and desirable instead of just boring old Lirien Vale, married mom who filed paperwork all day. "Lirien," Tanya squealed, "you did not just say that." "Oh, I absolutely did," I said, feeling emboldened by their reactions. "Colin Maris knows exactly how to handle me. He's got these strong hands, you know. And when he tells me to stay late to finish up some special projects," I made air quotes and winked dramatically. "Let's just say I always leave his office completely satisfied." The laughter was getting louder now. I could see people at other tables turning to look at us. Good. Let them look. Let them see that Lirien Vale wasn't just some boring housewife. "Girl, you are wild," Sarah said, pulling out her own phone. "Say that again. I need to get this on video." I was about to repeat my joke when I felt a familiar presence behind me. The laughter around our table died down suddenly, and I turned to see my husband Evan standing there with 2 drinks in his hands, his face pale. "Hey, honey," I said brightly, as if nothing had happened. "I was just telling everyone about work. You know how stressful my job can be." Evan's jaw was tight. He set one of the drinks down in front of me without saying a word. I could see the muscle in his cheek twitching the way it did when he was trying not to lose his temper. "What's wrong?" I asked innocently. "Can't you take a joke? Everyone else thinks I'm hilarious." "We need to talk," he said quietly. "Oh, come on, Evan," I laughed, looking around at my coworkers for support. "Don't be such a buzzkill. It's a party. Live a little." But the damage was done. I could see it in his eyes, in the way he was looking at me like he didn't recognize the woman he'd married. The group around us had gone awkwardly quiet, suddenly very interested in their drinks. "I think I'm going to head home," Evan said, his voice carefully controlled. "You can get a ride with someone else." "Seriously?" I called after him as he walked away. "You're going to storm off because of a little joke? God, Evan, when did you become so uptight?" He didn't turn around. I watched him grab his coat from the back of his chair at our assigned table and head for the exit. Several of my coworkers were watching the whole thing, and I felt my cheeks burn with embarrassment. "Don't mind him," I said, forcing a laugh. "He's been working too much lately. No sense of humor anymore." But the mood had shifted. The easy laughter from before felt forced now. People started drifting away to other conversations, other tables. Within 10 minutes, I was sitting alone with my wine, watching my husband's empty chair, and wondering why I felt like I'd just made a terrible mistake. My phone buzzed with a text from my mum. "Saw Sarah's video on Facebook. You're hilarious, honey. Evan needs to lighten up." Wait, Sarah had posted the video already? I quickly opened Facebook and saw it there. Me, slightly drunk and animated, making my joke about Colin satisfying me better than my husband. It already had 15 likes and 3 shares. My stomach dropped a little, but I pushed the feeling away. It was just a joke. A funny story. If Evan couldn't handle his wife being the life of the party for once, that was his problem. 20 minutes later, as I was getting ready to call an Uber, my phone buzzed again. This time it was a message from Jake. "Hey, thought you should know. I accidentally sent that video to your husband when I was trying to send it to my girlfriend. My contacts got mixed up, sorry." My blood ran cold. Accidentally. The way he'd written it, with that little smirking emoji at the end, made it clear there was nothing accidental about it. I tried calling Evan, but it went straight to voicemail. When I finally got home an hour later, the apartment was dark. I could hear the shower running in our bathroom, and when I tried the door, it was locked. That night, Evan slept in the guest room. I woke up the next morning with a pounding headache and the sinking feeling that my joke might have consequences I hadn't anticipated. Evan had already left for work. His coffee cup was in the sink, but he hadn't made me any, which was unusual. He always made coffee for both of us. I tried calling him around 10, but he didn't answer. I sent a text. "Can we talk about last night? I think you're overreacting." No response. By lunch, I was getting frustrated. I posted on Facebook, "When your husband can't take a joke and decides to pout like a child. Some men are so sensitive." The responses were immediate and supportive. My friends from high school, my sister, even my mum, they all rallied around me. "Men and their fragile egos," commented Lisa. "You deserve better, girl," wrote my cousin Amy. "Evan always seemed uptight to me," added Jennifer from my yoga class. Their support felt good. It validated what I was already thinking, that Evan was being ridiculous, that he was making a big deal out of nothing. I was the victim here, not him. When I picked up our daughter Nell from school that afternoon, she seemed quieter than usual. "Daddy was sad this morning," she said as we walked to the car. He was looking at his phone and he looked like he was going to cry. "Daddy's just tired, sweetheart," I told her. "Work has been stressful for him." But when Evan came home that evening, the tension was thick enough to cut with a knife. He was polite but distant, answering Nell's questions about her day but barely looking at me. During dinner, his phone kept buzzing with notifications, and I caught glimpses of what looked like messages from his sister Tessa and his mother. After we put Nell to bed, I tried to approach him. "Evan, this is ridiculous. It was just a joke. Everyone at the party was laughing." He looked up from his laptop, where he seemed to be organizing files into folders. "A joke about having an affair with your boss, in front of our co-workers, on video." "It wasn't about having an affair," I protested. "It was just suggestive humor, office banter. Colin and I joke around all the time." "Colin and you joke around all the time," he repeated slowly, "about him satisfying you better than your husband." God, when you say it like that, you make it sound so serious. It's not like that. Evan was quiet for a long moment, his fingers hovering over his keyboard. "I've been getting calls all day. From my mum, from Tessa, from people at work who saw the video. Do you know how humiliating it is to have your co-workers asking if your wife is cheating on you?" "I'm not cheating on anyone," I snapped. "I made a joke, one joke, and now you're acting like I committed some terrible crime." "Are you?" he asked quietly. "Am I what?" "Cheating." I felt my face flush with indignation. "I can't believe you would even ask me that. After 8 years of marriage, you think I would—" "Just answer the question, Lirien." "No," I said firmly. "I am not cheating on you. Colin is my boss. We work together. Sometimes we grab coffee or stay late to finish projects. That's called having a job, Evan." He nodded slowly, but I could see he wasn't entirely convinced. That hurt more than I expected it to. "I'm sleeping in the guest room again tonight," he said, closing his laptop. "For how long?" "I don't know." After he left, I sat alone in our living room, scrolling through the comments on my Facebook post. More and more people were weighing in, and the video Sarah had posted was being shared in our local mom groups, our neighborhood Facebook page. Most of the comments were supportive of me, criticizing Evan for being controlling and insecure, but there were a few that made me uncomfortable. "Yikes, this is not a good look." "I feel bad for her husband." Some things should stay private. I deleted those comments and blocked the users. I didn't need that kind of negativity in my life. Around midnight, I heard Evan's phone ringing in the guest room. Through the thin walls, I could hear him talking in low, serious tones. I pressed my ear to the door and caught fragments. Need to document everything. Talk to a lawyer. Protect Nell. My heart started racing. Was he seriously considering divorce over a stupid joke? I tried the door handle, but it was locked. Evan had never locked a door against me before in our entire marriage. I knocked softly. Evan, can we please talk about this? The talking stopped, but he didn't answer the door. The next morning, I found him in the kitchen making coffee, but only one cup. When I tried to kiss him goodbye like normal, he turned his head so my lips hit his cheek instead. I'm working late tonight, he said without looking at me. Don't wait up. After he left, I found myself going through his things, looking for clues about what he might be planning. His laptop was password protected now, something he'd never bothered with before. His phone was locked, and he'd been taking it with him everywhere, even to the bathroom. I called Colin at work, needing to hear a friendly voice. Hey, beautiful, he answered on the second ring. How are you holding up after your star performance the other night? Not great, I admitted. Evan is being impossible about the whole thing. Men can be so insecure, Colin said sympathetically. Don't let him make you feel bad for having a sense of humor. You were the highlight of that party. Really? Absolutely. Everyone's still talking about it. You're like a legend around here now. That made me feel a little better. At least someone appreciated my boldness. Want to grab lunch today? Colin asked. I could use a break from all the post-holiday chaos. I'd like that, I said, already feeling more like myself. We met at a little cafe downtown, the same place we'd been going for our coffee meetings over the past few months. Colin was charming as always, making me laugh, telling me I looked beautiful, treating me like I was interesting and desirable. It was such a contrast to Evan's cold silence. You know, Colin said, reaching across the table to touch my hand. If Evan can't appreciate what he has, that's his loss. I felt a flutter in my stomach at his touch. Colin, I'm just saying. You're an amazing woman, Lirien. Smart, funny, beautiful. Any man would be lucky to have you. We were so absorbed in our conversation that I didn't notice the woman at the table behind us, taking pictures with her phone until we were getting ready to leave. When I looked closer, I realized it was Janet from Nell's school, someone who definitely knew both Evan and me. My stomach dropped, but I forced a smile and waved. She waved back, but there was something knowing in her expression that made me uncomfortable. That evening, Evan came home even later than usual. When I tried to ask him about his day, he gave me one-word answers. During dinner, his phone buzzed with what looked like an email notification. I caught a glimpse of the subject line before he turned the phone face down. Anonymous tip, employee misconduct. What was that? I asked. Work stuff, he said curtly, but I could see the tension in his shoulders, the way his jaw was clenched. Something was happening, and I had the growing suspicion that my lunch with Colin hadn't gone as unnoticed as I'd hoped. That night, after Evan had locked himself in the guest room again, I lay awake staring at the ceiling, wondering how a simple joke had spiraled so far out of control. But I pushed down the voice in my head that suggested maybe, just maybe, I was the one who had caused all of this. It was easier to blame Evan for being oversensitive than to examine my own behavior too closely. The anonymous tip had been sent to both HR and Evan's personal email. I found out about it the next morning when Colin called me in a panic. Lirien, we have a problem. HR wants to see both of us this afternoon. Someone sent them photos of us at lunch yesterday and claims we're having an inappropriate relationship. My heart sank. What kind of photos? The kind that make it look like we're more than just colleagues. The one where I'm holding your hand looks particularly damning. I closed my eyes, remembering Janet's knowing smile. I think I know who sent them. It doesn't matter who sent them. What matters is how we handle this. We need to get our stories straight. It was just a friendly lunch between colleagues, nothing more. Can you stick to that? Of course, I said, but my voice sounded shaky, even to my own ears. The HR meeting was a nightmare. Janet Miller, the HR director, had printed out the photos and spread them across her desk like evidence in a criminal trial. There was Colin touching my hand, me laughing at something he'd said with my head thrown back, the two of us leaning close together across the small cafe table. These photos, combined with the video from the holiday party, paint a concerning picture, Janet said, her voice professionally neutral, but her disapproval clear. Can you explain the nature of your relationship? We're colleagues, I said firmly. Colin is my supervisor. We occasionally have working lunches to discuss projects and department goals. Working lunches, Janet repeated, looking at the photos again. Mr. Maris, is this your assessment as well? Colin shifted uncomfortably in his chair. Lirien is a valued member of our team. We have a professional working relationship. The video from the holiday party suggests otherwise. Ms. Vale, you made some very explicit comments about Mr. Maris satisfying you. Can you explain those comments? I felt my face burning. It was a joke. Poor judgment, maybe, but just a joke. I'd had too much to drink. And the frequency of your private meetings. According to your calendars, you've had lunch together at least twice a week for the past 3 months. I glanced at Colin, but he was staring at his hands. We work closely together on several projects. Sometimes it's easier to discuss complex issues away from the office environment. Janet made some notes on her legal pad. I'm going to need to conduct a full investigation. In the meantime, Mr. Maris, you'll be reassigned to work with other administrative staff. Ms. Vale, you'll report directly to me until this matter is resolved. As we left the HR office, Colin grabbed my arm. This is a disaster, he hissed. My wife is going to find out. My career could be over. Your career? I stared at him in disbelief. What about mine? You're an admin assistant, Lirien. I'm a department head. I have more to lose here. The callousness of his words hit me like a slap. This was the man who'd been telling me I was amazing, who'd been making me feel special and desired. Now that there were consequences, I was suddenly disposable. So what are you saying? I'm saying we need to distance ourselves. No more lunches, no more private conversations. If anyone asks, we barely know each other outside of work. He walked away without another word, leaving me standing alone in the hallway, feeling used and foolish. When I got home that evening, Evan was already there, sitting at the kitchen table with his laptop open and a stack of papers beside him. Nell was at his mother's house. Something about a sleepover that I didn't remember arranging. We need to talk, he said without looking up. If this is about the HR thing, I can explain. I know about the HR investigation, he said calmly. I also know about the lunch dates. All of them. Janet from school called me this morning. My stomach dropped. Evan, it's not what you think. What do I think, Lirien? You think I'm having an affair, but I'm not. Colin and I are just friends. We work together. Evan finally looked up at me, and I was shocked by how tired he looked. There were dark circles under his eyes, and he seemed to have aged years in just the past week. Friends, he repeated. Is that what you call someone you've been texting 50 times a day? He turned his laptop around so I could see the screen. It was our cell phone bill, with my number highlighted. Page after page of text messages to Colin's number. Sometimes late at night, sometimes early in the morning. How did you get this? I'm the primary account holder, Lirien. I get copies of all the bills. He scrolled down through the records. December 15th, 47 text messages to Colin Maris. December 16th, 32 messages. December 17th, 61 messages. I stared at the numbers, my mind racing. Had I really been texting him that much? And then there are the phone calls, Evan continued, clicking to another tab. Some lasting over an hour, usually when I'm at work or after I've gone to bed. We talk about work stuff, I said weakly. At 11 p.m., on weekends. I didn't have an answer for that. Evan closed the laptop and picked up one of the papers from the stack. This morning I had lunch with my lawyer. Do you know what he told me? My mouth went dry. Evan, please. He told me that in cases of adultery, the court tends to favor the faithful spouse in custody arrangements. Custody? The word came out as a whisper. I'm filing for divorce, Lirien. The room seemed to spin around me. You can't be serious. Over some text messages and a stupid joke. It's not about the joke, Evan said, his voice still maddeningly calm. It's about the lying. It's about the disrespect. It's about the fact that you've been having an emotional affair for months, and you're still trying to convince me it's nothing. It is nothing, I shouted. Colin is my friend. I'm allowed to have friends. Friends don't talk about how much better they satisfy you than your husband. Friends don't hold hands at intimate lunches. Friends don't text each other good morning and good night every single day. I felt tears starting to form in my eyes. Evan, please, we can work this out. I'll stop talking to Colin if that's what you want. It's too late for that. It's not too late. We have a daughter together. We have a life together. You can't just throw it all away because you're jealous of my friendship with Colin. Evan stood up and gathered his papers. I'm staying at my mom's tonight. The divorce papers will be ready next week. You're really going to do this? You're going to destroy our family over nothing? He stopped at the doorway and turned back to me. I'm not the one who destroyed our family, Lirien. You did that the moment you decided Colin Maris was more important than your marriage. After he left, I sat alone in our kitchen, staring at the cell phone bill he'd left behind. Page after page of evidence that I couldn't deny or explain away. I called my mom, sobbing. He's being ridiculous, she said immediately. Men are so threatened when their wives have male friends. You haven't done anything wrong, sweetheart. But maybe I have, I whispered. Maybe I've been too close to Colin. Nonsense, you're a grown woman. You're allowed to have friendships. Evan is just being controlling and jealous. Her words made me feel a little better, but they couldn't erase the image of those phone records, or the memory of Colin's hand on mine, or the way my heart raced every time he texted me. That night, I tried calling Colin, needing to hear his voice, needing him to tell me everything would be okay. But my call went straight to voicemail. I tried texting him, but he didn't respond. By morning, I realized he was serious about distancing himself. The man who had been texting me good morning every day for months, who had made me feel beautiful and desired, had completely disappeared from my life the moment things got complicated. I was truly alone. 2 weeks later, my mother suggested we all have dinner together to work things out like adults. She'd been calling me daily since Evan moved out, insisting that he was being unreasonable and that all marriages went through rough patches. He just needs to see that you're a family, she said. Once he remembers what he's throwing away, he'll come to his senses. I wasn't so sure, but I was desperate. The divorce papers had been served, and the reality of losing everything was starting to sink in. Evan had been coldly polite during the few interactions we'd had, usually when he came by to pick up Nell or drop her off. He'd found a lawyer, opened his own bank account, and started looking for an apartment. This wasn't just a threat anymore. It was really happening. The dinner was supposed to be neutral territory, a family restaurant where we'd celebrated Nell's last birthday. Both sets of parents would be there, along with Evan's sister, Tessa. The plan was to have a calm, rational discussion about what was best for everyone, especially Nell. I should have known it would be a disaster from the moment we sat down. Evan looked like he'd rather be anywhere else, and Tessa kept shooting me hostile looks across the table. My mother immediately went on the offensive. Evan, I think you're being very unfair to Lirien, she said before we'd even ordered drinks. She made one little joke at a party, and you're acting like she committed murder. Mom, I said quietly, maybe we should order first. No, I want to say this, she continued. Marriage is about forgiveness. It's about working through problems together. You can't just run away the first time things get difficult. Evan's mother, Irene, set down her menu with a sharp snap. Marcia, with all due respect, this isn't about one joke. This is about months of inappropriate behavior. Inappropriate behavior? My mother's voice rose. Having lunch with a colleague is inappropriate now. Having an affair is inappropriate, Tessa said bluntly. The word hung in the air like a bomb. Nell, who had been coloring on her kid's menu, looked up with confusion. "What's an affair?" she asked innocently. "Nothing, sweetheart," I said quickly. "The adults are just talking about grown-up stuff." "It's when a married person has a boyfriend or girlfriend," Tessa said, ignoring my glare. "When they break their promises to their husband or wife." "Tessa," I snapped, "that's enough." "Is it?" she shot back. "Because I've seen the evidence, Lirien. The text messages, the phone calls, the photos. If that's not an affair, what would you call it?" "I would call it friendship," my mother interjected. "Women are allowed to have male friends." "Not when they're telling people their boss satisfies them better than their husband," Irene said coldly. Nell's eyes were getting wide. I could see her processing the tension, trying to understand why all the adults were angry. "Can we please not do this in front of Nell?" I pleaded. "You should have thought about that before you started this whole mess," Tessa said. "I didn't start anything." I felt my composure cracking. I made a joke, one stupid joke, and now everyone is acting like I'm some kind of terrible person. "It wasn't just the joke," Evan said quietly. It was the first time he'd spoken since we sat down. It was everything that came after. The lying, the denial, the way you tried to make me feel crazy for being upset. "I never lied to you." Evan pulled out his phone and set it on the table. "Last Tuesday, I asked you where you were during lunch. You said you were at home, but your car was seen at Riverside Cafe at the same time Colin Maris was there." My heart sank. I forgot about that." "You forgot about having lunch with the man you're supposedly not involved with?" "We just ran into each other." "Lirien, stop." Evan's voice was tired. "Just stop. Every time you open your mouth, it's another lie, another excuse, another reason why nothing is your fault." Tears were starting to form in my eyes. "I'm not lying. Maybe I haven't been completely honest about everything, but I never meant for any of this to happen." "What exactly did happen?" Irene asked pointedly. "Because my son has been destroyed by this whole situation, and I think we deserve to know the truth." I looked around the table at all the faces staring at me expectantly. My mother's supportive but worried expression, Irene's cold anger, Tessa's disgust, Evan's exhausted disappointment, and Nell's confused fear. "Nothing happened," I said weakly. "Colin and I are friends. We talk, we have lunch sometimes. That's it." "Friends don't text each other 60 times a day," Tessa said. "Friends don't hold hands at romantic cafe lunches. Friends don't make jokes about sexual satisfaction in front of their husbands' co-workers." "You don't understand." "I understand perfectly," Tessa cut me off. "You got bored with your marriage, so you started an emotional affair with your boss. When you got caught, instead of apologizing and trying to fix things, you doubled down and tried to make Evan look like the bad guy." "That's not what happened." "Then what did happen?" Evan asked. "Tell me, Lirien. Tell me exactly what your relationship with Colin is, because I'm tired of guessing." The restaurant had gone quiet around us. Other diners were starting to stare. Nell had tears in her eyes, and I realized this whole dinner had been a terrible mistake. Colin makes me feel good about myself," I said finally. "He listens to me. He thinks I'm interesting and funny. He makes me feel like I matter." "And I don't." Evan's voice was barely above a whisper. "Not like that. Not anymore. We've been married for 8 years, Evan. We're like roommates now. We don't talk about anything except schedules and bills and Nell's school stuff. When's the last time you told me I was beautiful? When's the last time you seemed genuinely interested in what I had to say?" The table was silent. Even my mother looked uncomfortable. "So this is my fault," Evan said slowly. "Because I didn't compliment you enough, you decided to find someone who would." I didn't decide anything, it just happened. Affairs don't just happen, Irene said sharply. They're choices. A series of choices. I'm not having an affair, I shouted, finally losing my temper completely. God, why won't anyone believe me? Yes, I have feelings for Colin. Yes, I enjoy spending time with him. But I never slept with him. I never even kissed him. I'm being crucified for having feelings. The silence that followed was deafening. Nell was crying now, and other restaurant patrons were openly staring at our table. Having feelings, Tessa repeated. So you admit it. You admit you're in love with another man. I looked around the table desperately, realizing I'd just confessed to exactly what everyone had been accusing me of. I don't know. Maybe. But I never acted on it. Evan stood up abruptly, throwing his napkin on the table. I can't do this anymore. He kissed Nell on the top of her head. I love you, sweetheart. Daddy will call you tomorrow, okay? Daddy, don't go, Nell cried, reaching for him. Evan, please, I started to say, but he was already walking away. Tessa stood up too. You know what, Lirien? You're right. You do deserve someone who makes you feel special and interesting. But my brother deserves better than someone who thinks marriage is disposable the moment someone else pays attention to her. She followed Evan out, leaving me sitting with both sets of parents and my sobbing daughter. Well, my mother said after a long moment, I think that went better than expected. But even she didn't sound convinced. The next morning, I woke up to find Evan sitting at our kitchen table with his lawyer, a stern-looking woman in her 50s named Patricia Chen. They had papers spread across the table and were talking in low, serious voices. What's going on? I asked, pulling my robe tighter around myself. Ms. Vale, the lawyer said, standing up. I'm Patricia Chen, Mr. Vale's attorney. We're here to discuss the custody arrangement and division of assets. Custody arrangement? My voice came out higher than I intended. We haven't even tried counseling yet. Evan looked up at me with tired eyes. Lirien, after last night, I think it's clear that counseling isn't going to help. You admitted you have feelings for another man. You admitted you've been having an emotional affair. I was upset. I didn't mean... You meant it, he said quietly. And honestly, I'm almost relieved that you finally told the truth. Patricia opened a thick folder and pulled out several documents. Mr. Vale has been documenting the situation for the past 3 weeks. We have phone records, text message logs, witness statements, and photographic evidence of your relationship with Mr. Maris. She spread the papers across the table like a prosecutor presenting evidence. There were printouts of my text messages to Colin, hundreds of them, screenshots of our phone call logs, the photos from the cafe, even social media posts I'd made about Evan being no fun and too sensitive. This is... I stared at the evidence in shock. You've been spying on me. I've been protecting myself and my daughter, Evan said. Every time I asked you directly about Colin, you lied to me. So yes, I started keeping records. Patricia pointed to one of the documents. This is particularly concerning. Text messages between you and Mr. Maris discussing your marriage, including several where you complain about your husband's performance in intimate situations. I felt my face burning as I saw my own words printed out in black and white. Evan barely touches me anymore. I feel like we're just roommates. Sometimes I wonder what it would be like to be with someone who actually desired me. You make me feel so alive, Colin. I haven't felt this way in years. You had no right to access my private messages, I said weakly. Actually, I did, Evan replied. We're on a shared phone plan, and I'm the primary account holder. Everything you've sent and received is technically accessible to me. Patricia pulled out another document. There's also this email from your workplace HR department confirming that you're under investigation for an inappropriate relationship with a supervisor. That investigation cleared me, I protested. They found no evidence of physical misconduct. But they did find evidence of emotional misconduct, Patricia said, which is grounds for divorce in this state. I looked at Evan desperately. You're really going to do this? You're going to take Nell away from me because I had feelings for someone. I'm not taking Nell away from you, Evan said, but I am asking for primary custody. You've shown poor judgment, Lirien. You've been dishonest, manipulative, and you've put your own desires ahead of our family's well-being. That's not true, isn't it? He pulled out his phone and showed me a screenshot. This is from your Facebook page yesterday morning. After our disaster of a family dinner, you posted, "When your husband humiliates you in front of both families because he can't handle the truth. Some men are just too weak to fight for their marriage." I remembered writing that post in a fit of anger and hurt. I was upset. You blamed me. Again. Even after admitting that you have feelings for another man, you found a way to make yourself the victim. Patricia made some notes on her legal pad. Ms. Vale, I strongly recommend you retain your own counsel. This case is moving forward whether you cooperate or not. After they left, I sat alone in my kitchen, staring at the copies of evidence they'd left behind. Seeing my relationship with Colin laid out like that, the constant texting, the intimate conversations, the emotional dependence, I finally understood how it looked to an outsider, but understanding didn't make it easier to accept. I called Colin, needing to hear his voice, needing him to tell me we'd get through this together. The call went straight to voicemail. I tried texting him. "Evan's filing for divorce, I need to talk to you." No response. An hour later, I drove to his office building and waited in the parking lot until I saw him leave for lunch. When I approached him, he looked panicked. "Lirien, you can't be here. If someone sees us together—" "I don't care who sees us," I said desperately. "Evan has evidence of everything. Text messages, phone calls, photos. He's taking me to court." Colin looked around nervously. "This is exactly why I told you we needed to distance ourselves." "Distance ourselves? Colin, I'm losing my marriage because of our relationship. The least you can do is support me through this." "Our relationship?" He looked at me like I was crazy. "Lirien, we're friends, colleagues. We had some lunches and exchanged some texts. That's it." I stared at him in disbelief. "That's it? You told me I was amazing. You said Evan didn't deserve me. You said any man would be lucky to have me." "I was being nice. I was being a friend. I never promised you anything more than that. But the way you touched my hand, the way you looked at me— You're married, Lirien. I'm married. Whatever you thought was happening between us, it was all in your head." His words hit me like a physical blow. All in my head? "Look, I'm sorry you're going through this with your husband, but that's not my responsibility. You made choices. You have to live with the consequences." He walked away, leaving me standing alone in the parking lot, finally understanding that I had destroyed my marriage for a man who saw me as nothing more than a distraction. That evening, when Evan came to pick up Nell for his overnight visit, I tried one last time. "Evan, please, I know I made mistakes. I know I hurt you, but we can fix this. I'll do whatever it takes." He looked at me for a long moment, and I thought I saw a flicker of the man I'd married 8 years ago. "Do you love him?" he asked quietly. The question hung in the air between us. I thought about Colin's rejection that afternoon, about how quickly he'd abandoned me when things got complicated, about how foolish I'd been to risk everything for someone who saw me as disposable. "I thought I did," I whispered, "but I was wrong. I was so wrong about everything." Evan nodded slowly. "I know you were. But that doesn't change what happened. It doesn't change the months of lies and betrayal. It doesn't change the fact that you chose him over our family." "I didn't choose him over our family." "Yes, you did. Every text message, every secret lunch, every lie you told me, those were choices. And now we all have to live with the consequences." He called for Nell, who came running with her overnight bag. As I watched them drive away, I realized that my attempts to make Evan look like the unreasonable one had backfired completely. The evidence was clear, undeniable, and damning. I had no one to blame but myself. 3 months later, I found myself sitting in a courthouse conference room, facing the reality of everything I'd lost. The divorce proceedings had been swift and brutal. Evan's documentation was thorough. His lawyer was sharp, and my own attorney had advised me to accept the settlement rather than drag things out in a trial that would only expose more of my poor decisions to public scrutiny. The court awards primary physical custody to Mr. Vale, the judge had said that morning, with Ms. Vale receiving supervised visitation every other weekend until she completes court-mandated counseling. Supervised visitation. The word still stung. Because of my emotional instability and pattern of deceptive behavior, I couldn't be trusted alone with my own daughter until a therapist deemed me fit. The financial settlement was equally devastating. Because of the adultery clause and my documented misconduct, I received minimal alimony and no claim to Evan's retirement accounts. The house would be sold, with most of the proceeds going to him to establish a stable home for Nell. As I sat in my car in the courthouse parking lot, I tried calling my mother for support, but even she had grown tired of my complaints over the past few months. "Honey, maybe it's time to accept responsibility and move forward," she'd said during our last conversation. "This victim mentality isn't helping anyone." My friends from work had gradually distanced themselves too. The HR investigation had concluded that while no physical misconduct had occurred, my behavior had been unprofessional and disruptive to the workplace environment. I'd been transferred to a different department with a significant reduction in responsibilities and pay. Colin had avoided me completely since that day in the parking lot. He'd even switched to a different coffee shop for his lunch breaks. When I'd tried to approach him one last time, he'd been cold and dismissive. "Lirien, you need to move on," he'd said. "This obsession isn't healthy for either of us." Obsession. That's what he called the feelings I'd destroyed my marriage for. As I packed my belongings from the house Evan and I had shared, the silence pressed in, like an accusation. Nell barely spoke during supervised visits, confused and hurt, wetting the bed again and seeing a child psychologist to process the divorce. "Mummy, why can't you and Daddy live together anymore?" she'd asked last time, her 8-year-old eyes full of pain I'd caused. I had no real answer. How do you explain that I traded her stable family for a man who made me feel special for a few months? The house felt empty. Evan was at work. Most furniture stayed for him and Nell. I was moving to a small apartment I could barely afford on my reduced salary. While boxing clothes, I found old photo albums. Our wedding, Nell's birth, family vacations, Christmas mornings. We looked so happy. When had I stopped seeing it? I found Evan's anniversary card from our 5th year. "To my beautiful wife, thank you for making every day an adventure. I love you more than words can say." Had he stopped making me feel special, or had I stopped noticing? My phone buzzed. Patricia Chen, Evan's lawyer. "Final papers ready for pickup. Coordinate with Mr. Vale." 8 years of marriage, reduced to documents and a custody schedule. I carried the last box to my car as Evan's truck pulled in. We stared at each other across the driveway. "I left my keys on the counter," I said. He nodded. "Thank you." "Evan." "What was left? Sorry. I'd said it too many times. I love you. Maybe, but I'd proven it wasn't enough." "I hope you'll be happy," I said. "I hope you will be too." He meant it. Even after everything, he wasn't cruel. Driving away for the last time, I traced the choices. The joke at the office party, the text with Colin, the lies about just friendship, blaming Evan for being boring instead of working on us. Small decisions that added up to destruction. 6 months later, supervised visits lifted after counseling. Nell still preferred her father's house. New friends, soccer, thriving in school. One weekend she mentioned Evan's new girlfriend, a kind teacher who made him smile again. "Do you like her?" I asked, swallowing jealousy. "She's nice. She makes Daddy laugh. He's been sad for a long time. My daughter was happier now than before. The tension, the arguments, the distance between Evan and me, she'd felt it all. Maybe this was better. Colin transferred away. His marriage survived the scandal. He'd gotten a thrill with no consequences. I was the one who lost everything. That evening, helping Nell with homework in my apartment, I realized the woman who'd chased excitement at any cost was gone. In her place was someone who understood happiness isn't handed to you. It's built, choice by choice, with the people who matter. I learned too late to save my marriage, but maybe not too late for Nell and me. The papers were final, the consequences permanent. But for the first time in months, I wasn't drowning in regret. I was here, in this moment, with my daughter, trying to be the mother she deserved. It wasn't the life I'd planned, but it was the one I'd earned, and maybe, eventually, it would be enough.